everybody, Creative Katie Karen Burchill here. Welcome to my channel. In today's tutorial, we are going to make designer DIY gift boxes from something that you're probably throwing out and have lots of. We're going to use that and napkins. So what we're going to use are these coffee containers. They are cardboard. They come in various sizes. This one's a larger size. And we're going to use napkins with an all-over pattern. These really aren't good for typical art journaling pages, so I'm going to use them here. So here's a sneak peek of the 3 containers that I am going to make in this tutorial. And I'm making 3 because with each one I'm doing some different techniques and using different materials to inspire you and give you ideas for some of the ways that you can make your own designer gift boxes. So I'm going to use this napkin, Christmas Elements, this one, pomegranate, and foliage scatter. All of these napkins come from NINNYSNAPKINS.com. There's a coupon and a link in the description box. So right off the bat, I've given this 1, 2, 3 coats of gesso. And depending on how clear you want it, if you have a dark napkin like this snowflake one, you might get away with less coats. But if it has a lot of white, you really don't want any of the text coming through. You can also give this a coat of beige or ivory paint. I've painted the top. You can leave the trim or paint the trim. Again, I'm going to do an example of both. So with the napkin, these are luncheon napkins, and they're about 6.5 inches by 6.5. If you want it from top to bottom, you are going to have to use 2 napkins for the one larger container. But if you just use it, the 6.5, 6 inches, you can have a bit of a trim on the top and the bottom and get away with just using 1 napkin with some leftovers that you can use for something else per container. So that's what I'm going to do. But you do you, right? Now I use a rotary cutter and a cutting mat, and I just cut it right down the middle. You can cut it with scissors, but I love using, my metal ruler there, get a straight edge, and I just cut it. It's super easy. Really important at this stage, keep the excess plies on, makes it easier to cut. So there's 1 napkin, and I'm just going to do another one. Now, sometimes it matters what the orientation is. So take a look at your napkin and see how you're going to put it on the container and make sure you cut it the right way to give you whatever effect you want. So just FYI, and I know that because, well, I goofed. I did it wrong, but I can use that for something else. So I'm doing this kind of assembly line, and I'm doing 3 at a time, and that just saves me time because I'm just kind of doing each step as I go. I only need to get the materials out once, one cleanup. So as I said earlier, you want to take off the 2 excess plies. Now, don't throw these out. You can use this for texture, and, well, we're going to use them for something a little later on as well. So I'm just taking that off. Now we're going to glue this down with fluid matte medium. Now, the placement of this, when you're going to basically put 2 napkins in there, you want it to sort of line up, but it's not going to, and it doesn't really matter. You don't have to be precious about it, but I am making sure that the seam, the joint where the napkins are meeting on both sides, are kind of not on the front. They're off to the side. They're not front and center. So when the canister, the container is sitting facing you, it looks great. So here I've put the napkin on. I'm applying, 2, 3 inches of fluid matte medium, and then I'm flipping the napkin over. Now I've got the rest of the napkin coming forward. It's not sticky forward, and I'm able to lift it and put it on. Now, you want to press this down, and you can use your fingers, and I do that later. But another way that I've seen people doing it, they take a piece of saran wrap, and that just makes it frictionless, and you're less likely to rip the napkin. Now, at this stage, we're not putting any of the matte medium on the top of the napkin. We're just putting it underneath, and I'm giving, 3 inches, 4 inches. You don't want to do the whole thing and try to manipulate the napkin. That's just, a recipe for disaster. and I'm just pushing it down. Now you're going to get slight wrinkles here. Don't fret the small stuff. It's not going to matter. You do not have to be super precious with this. I mean, you can be as meticulous as you demand of yourself, but it doesn't matter. Now I'm going to show you here. I'm going to try to overlap this and make a perfect match on this side in case you want to do that, in case it matters to you. So I've kind of layered it up, overlapped, and then I'm going to water cut the excess off. So there's just one layer. If you glue it right on top, what typically happens is the colors change a little bit and you may not like that effect. So I've found that instead of overlapping, water cutting, as you see me doing here. Now, water cutting, I'm just taking a liner brush with a very little bit amount of water. You do not need much when you're water cutting napkins. And I'm just pulling that off. This gives kind of that deckled edge, which is going to disappear. You're not going to see a seam whatsoever. So I'm just going to cut off what I don't need, what would be overlapped, and then I've now got the placement for it. Now that that's done, I'm going to glue the rest down. I didn't want to do this before because I didn't want it sticky when I did the water cutting. I'm going to push that down, and here you just see me using my fingers. And one of the things that I need to say here is the napkins that I typically get from Ninny's Napkins are fairly good quality, and they hold up to adding the wet medium to a certain extent. Whereas ones that I bought at Dollar Tree or Dollarama or some of the cheaper ones, they break down a whole lot more. So just be aware. Use the napkins you have by all means, but be aware that they're not all created equal. So here I'm just going down and I'm pushing that down. Now, if I had painted this container cream or ivory, that ivory color would show through the white of the napkin. It would kind of vintage out the look a little bit and it would give a total different look. So that's an option that you have. So now I'm just meeting that again. And here I've water cut it as much as possible, but it's impossible for this to match. It's not going to be exact. So this is kind of off to the side where it's least visible. And in the end, with how I treat this, you're not going to see the difference. It's not going to matter. And you're going to have to trust me on that. And now I'm giving it a coat on top with the fluid matte medium. And I'm doing this because I want it to be a non-porous surface because I'm going to do some overpainting and other techniques. And I just want it, it's kind of varnishes it as well. So it kind of protects it a little bit from moisture. So now I'm just going to do another one and I will speed this up, but I'm going to do this one. And this one, I didn't care about matching it. I didn't do the water cutting or any of that. And it's just easier. And you'll notice that it's not exactly precise. The top and the bottom, the measurement isn't exact. I just eyeballed it because again, you can fix it, you can change it, and it doesn't matter when the finished product. I tried to keep this super simple. I did rip off, there was some text there, like the brand or the company that made the napkin, and I didn't want that in the middle of the thing. And here I'm just cutting it straight off the edge and then gluing it down with the fluid matte medium. This napkin is the foliage scatter, and I love the colors of this. So again, I'm giving it a coat of the fluid matte medium. And there are the 3 containers already done the first step where I've just applied the napkin. And now I'm going to show you different ways or different things you can add to this. Now you can use your sentiment stamps, your card making stamps. I could stamp joy on there, but if I stamp it right on the container, it is flexible and you're not going to get a perfect stamp. So you think, okay, I can stamp it on the napkin before I glued it down. Would that work? And the answer is yes. When you go to stamp, and here I'm just doing an example of it, that one worked out right. I got a nice good stamp. But this one, I didn't press hard enough and it's imperfect. And now it's on my napkin and I've either wrecked my napkin or I have to put up with something that I really don't like. So I'm going to give you an alternative to this that also uses napkin, and that is the excess plies. Now, when the ply that's right next to the picture may have some picture residual color on it. You want the one that's the furthest away, and then you're going to stamp on that napkin. So you can stamp as many of these as you want. And I always recommend stamping more than you think you're going to need because some of them may fall apart when you do the water cutting. Some of them may not work. Now, here, if you make a mistake, you just simply don't use that stamped image. You just stamp another one. And here I'm stamping lots. I don't think I'm going to use all of these, but if I do, I have them. So now I'm just taking my liner brush again and I'm water cutting around the stamped sentiment. I did let this dry before I'm doing this, so you want to do that. You can use a heat tool if you like. And then I've just water cut it around. Again, very little water is needed. And then I'm pulling that off. Now that I have these loose, I can place it on my container and kind of get an idea of where I want everything to go, which is the other advantage. Because if I don't like something, I can move it before I put it down. But if you're stamping directly on it, you're kind of stuck with what is. So these are an example of a couple. This one ripped. This one wasn't a perfect stamp. These ones are just going in the garbage. And I'm using something that I would have otherwise thrown out, the excess plies. So here I've got the Holly Jolly, and I'm going to glue these down with the Fluid Matte Medium. The white of the napkin is going to go translucent. You won't even see that I've glued something down there. To the person that gets this as a gift box, they're not even going to know that this sentiment wasn't part of the design from the beginning. I'm just gluing it down, putting a good amount underneath and some on top. And I've used the black and I'm really liking how that works. And before I turn and put more on, I'm just drying it because if it's sticky and you put it flat against the table, it may stick and rip and you won't really like that. So I'm just putting this randomly and, no rhyme or reason to it. And I really like how that just added to it. Now I'm going to select my trim color. And on this one, I'm adding red as a coordinating color. There's those little red berries on there. So I'm going to put a red band on the bottom and on the top. And I'm just using my regular acrylic paint. I matched it as close as I can to the red that's in there. And I'm using, the napkin as the guide as to which one. If if you didn't glue your napkin down perfectly straight, like I didn't, you can overlap it and fix that now if that matters to you. Giving it a dry, and then I'm painting the top is all, just to finish it off. Now, my plan with these boxes is to put some baking inside of them. It can hold any kind of gift, baking, caramel corn, anything. It can also sit on a table and be a home decor piece. Here I'm splattering with gold. Now, if I wanted the splatters not on the red part, I would have splattered and then done the red afterwards. So the order kind of matters, depends on what you want. I grab my Posca pen and I'm just giving kind of faux stitching in black all the way around the top and the bottom of each of the bands. None of the things that I've done on here are particularly difficult or require any elaborate supplies. Hopefully, they're all things that you already have. Now, if you wanted a set of them and you bought, a whole package of napkins, you could make 3 of these, and wouldn't that be lovely? And there is the finished first gift box. So here's the next one, and this one is the napkin is called Christmas Elements, and I've opted to use the green that's on there. And what I used is my hooker's green, and I added some black to it to get it the right shade. And so I'm just painting the trim. Now, someone might ask, well, Karen, why wouldn't you paint the trim first? Well, my napkins are white. They have a white background. And if I go too thick, that's going to show through. You may like that, you may not. So this is the way of doing it. Now I'm going to use my Inktense blocks, and I am going to increase the depth of color on most of the elements on here. I just use my Inktense block. I get you know, rub off the color. It activates with water, much like watercolor, but it's permanent when it's completely dry. And I like that, but you could use watercolor as long as you don't put wet medium on top. And this doesn't really need to be varnished afterwards, so there really is no need to varnish it after. Unless you want it to be a home decor piece and get, multiple years out of it. So I'm just painting. So all the green, the holly, the evergreen boughs, I paint the red ribbon, um, the ornaments, the balls as well. Whereas the first one, I did no overpainting. Now it's really critical here. Remember at the beginning, after we glued it down, we put a coat of the fluid matte medium on top to turn it into a non-porous surface. You absolutely have to do that if you're going to do any overpainting. Otherwise, it's just going to wick out and it's not going to look pleasant. So here I'm just deepening the color, kind of matching it to my trim, and I'm loving how that works. Now, if you don't want to overpaint it, you don't have to. It looked lovely the way it was. Again, I am showing you options. You pick what's in your skill set, what you want to do, what you have in your stash. So then I grabbed gold, and I had these stars here, and I just wanted to add a little bit of bling on there. So I'm painting out those stars. That was my first plan, was just to do that element on the napkin. And then there was this faded partial star, and I thought, I'm going to paint them as well, and added a little bit more gold to my napkin than what was there originally. So we can make it our own. And I keep going with this. I add there's the gold berries in the middle of the ribbon, so I do that as well. And then I add some gold here. So I end up adding quite a bit of gold to the napkin, changing the color of it, but I really love the effect. So you can do as little or as much as you want. You might have just done the holly or the evergreen boughs or just the ribbons. Now, instead of doing the faux stitching here, what I'm doing is I am shading with black, and that's just giving some variation to it. It kind of hides if it's not a perfectly straight line, because now you have variation of color and tone. And I'm just going to shade the top and the bottom of both of those bands. Now, adding that dark element to it is also going to make another step more visible. And we'll get to that in a few minutes or in a little while. And here's the next step. I'm taking gold paint and my liner brush, and I'm doing the faux stitching with the liner brush. So if you don't have Posca pens, acrylic paint pens, you can just use your liner brush and do faux stitching. Probably going to be a little bit thicker. Here I've added the gold. I don't have a Posca pen that's gold. I don't have any kind of pen that's gold. And here is that finished one next to the napkin that was used to create it. I got to say, I'm not a fan of green, but I do absolutely love this box. I think this one is my favorite. So this one is pomegranates, and I've opted to use brown. and this is burnt umber, and I mix it with a little bit of black again to get the tone that I wanted. There's some brown in there, and I thought it was a nice complement to the colors of the napkin. So whatever napkin you're picking, pick a color that coordinates well to it. So I'm just painting that out, taking time to clean my craft mat so it doesn't get transferred back onto the napkin. And here I've spread gold paint out with my palette knife, and I'm stamping some script right on top of various places on the napkin, on the pomegranates as well as on the white background. So you can use any of your stamps and add another element. And I love the gold here. It's very subtle, doesn't really take away from the focal image from the pomegranates, but it does add a nice bit of interest. And again, you could have, with this one, painted ivory in the background and it would change the tone of it and the look. Now, we are going to use this sparkling glitter glaze. This is from Polyvine, but you can get glitter glaze in different brands. This is the one I have, and I tend to bring it out come Christmas time. And I am going to paint. At first, I thought only the open or the cut pomegranate and get that little shimmer shine like the sugared, fruits and stuff. But then I decided to paint out with the glitter glaze all the pomegranates that were on this container. Now, this glaze goes on cloudy and it dries super clear and has the glitter to it. You could apply it super thick, which could give you more glitter. What I do is I give it 2 coats. I give it one and I see how much glitter is happening. And then if I decide I want to boost that, I give it another coat. You can use a heat tool to speed up this process, but it doesn't take very long. And you want to avoid trying to bubble it. And there's that finished project. Which one is your favorite? The pomegranates, the holly jolly, or the Christmas elements? Here's the holly jolly. This one's super simple. We just basically stamp the sentiment on it and put the band with some faux stitching. This one we overpainted a lot using Inktense blocks and acrylic paint and a little bit of faux stitching with the fine line brush. And this one, pomegranate, I did overpaint some of it. I didn't show that. And I used the sparkle glaze to add that extra bling. Loving that. So there they are. Which one would you like to see under your tree? I hope you give some of these ideas a try. Save something out of the recycle bin and turn it into a beautiful gift box. Until next time, go get creative.